It was exactly 7:13 a.m. when the knock came, sharp, practiced, and familiar. For the third time that month, the police stood at my front door. Not because I'd broken any law. I wasn't throwing wild parties or speeding down suburban streets. Yet there they were again, two officers with unreadable expressions, a clipboard in hand, and that same tired script that sent a chill down my spine. "Sir, we received another complaint from the HOA about disturbances reported at this address." A statement I'd come to resent deeply, not just for its content but because it never should have applied to me in the first place. I didn't even belong to an HOA. 3 months earlier, I'd moved into the place, a bit of a fixer-upper I'd managed to score at a solid price. Quiet neighborhood, mostly older folks, a few families here and there. I made absolutely sure that the property was outside of any HOA jurisdiction before I signed the dotted line. I wasn't interested in living under the thumb of a group that thought they had the right to control the color of my front door or the height of my hedges. My house was technically outside the boundaries of Windmere Oaks, a well-known, rigidly governed HOA community. My property wasn't part of their little empire. The deed, the title, the zoning maps, all of it confirmed I was in the clear. Independent. So why did it feel like I was under surveillance? The first police visit, I chalked up to a misunderstanding. They'd said someone complained about unauthorized construction. All I'd done was repaint my fence, nothing major, nothing loud. The second time, it was a supposed noise complaint, which would have been comical if it hadn't been so intrusive. I hadn't even been home that weekend. But the third time? That was different. That's when it sank in, this wasn't a coincidence, and it wasn't stopping. I noticed patterns, especially when I'd come home and spot her, the woman with sharp glasses, a permanent visor tan, and a clipboard that looked surgically attached to her hand. Her name was Barbara, and she lived 2 houses down. Whenever I pulled into my driveway, her eyes followed me, unblinking. I tried introducing myself once, she responded by closing her front door in my face. Then came the letters. They started appearing in my mailbox. No return address, no name, just vague and threatening notes. Some were typed, others scrawled in neat cursive. Your lawn is not in compliance. Remove the satellite dish. Trash bins must be concealed. And always ending the same way, you've been warned. At first, I laughed. Until my mailbox got vandalized. That was when it stopped being amusing. I realized this wasn't just about some old woman's warped sense of community, it was targeted harassment. And I wasn't going to let it continue. After that third police visit, I stopped pretending it would blow over. I knew I had to build my case. I started at the county recorder's office, where I pulled the full parcel map for my address and double-checked my property lines. The woman at the counter flipped through the documents and casually confirmed that my lot was a good 600 feet outside the HOA's jurisdiction, exactly as I'd thought. I had her print everything. Parcel boundaries, survey maps, zoning history, even the original planning documents for the area. If this ended in court, I wanted to be ready. I didn't stop there. I got my hands on Windmere Oaks HOA charter, which, as public record, was easy enough to access. Their authority clearly ended a full block away from my driveway. My house sat in an unincorporated zone, free from HOA control. No rules about shutters, no restrictions on lawn ornaments, no self-important newsletter dictating community behavior. But someone clearly hadn't accepted that fact. The next morning, I taped copies of the official boundary maps inside my mailbox and tacked a bold sign onto my fence: this property is not part of Windmere Oaks HOA. Harassment will be reported. I hoped it would end there, that maybe, just maybe, the message would sink in and Barbara would redirect her clipboard elsewhere. But of course, that wasn't how it went. That week alone, 2 more anonymous complaints came in. One accused me of illegal parking because my cousin's van was in the driveway. The other cited excessive plant growth in the backyard. That last one sent a chill through me. The backyard? How would anyone know what was going on back there unless they were snooping around? I reviewed my security footage. Sure enough, there it was, 5:42 a.m., a figure creeping along the side of my house, just outside the motion detection zone. The image was grainy, but I recognized the outline, the stance, the visor. It was Barbara. At that moment, everything clicked. This wasn't about HOA rules or neighborhood aesthetics. This was personal. Maybe she didn't like my face. Maybe she hated that I had friends over, or music playing, or that I dared to move in without subscribing to her rulebook. Whatever the motive, she had decided that I didn't belong, and took it upon herself to drive me out. But I wasn't going anywhere. I brought the footage to the police and filed a trespassing report. If they were going to keep showing up at my door, the least they could do was see who the real problem was. When they watched the footage, something shifted in their demeanor. One officer glanced at the other and muttered under his breath, "You're not the only one she's done this to." And just like that, the mask came off. Barbara wasn't just meddling with me. She had a pattern, a history. And I wasn't going to be her next victim, I was going to be the last one who tolerated it. "You might be the first target," the officer had said, "but you might also be the first to push back with proof." That sentence echoed in my head for days. If Barbara had harassed others, why had no one said a word? That silence needed breaking. So, I took it upon myself to knock on doors, one at a time. At first, the neighbors were tight-lipped, polite smiles, non-committal nods, and vague responses. But when I reached the brown brick house at the end of the block, everything changed. A tall older man in a worn ball cap opened the door, coffee in hand. His name was Jerry. As soon as I mentioned Barbara, he chuckled grimly. "Oh yeah," he said. "She called the city on me for installing solar panels. Claimed they were an eyesore." Jerry, like me, didn't belong to the HOA. And he'd been dealing with Barbara's interference for years. Over the next hour, we sat and talked. Jerry had lived in the neighborhood for 2 decades. He knew the day the HOA formed, the day it expanded, and the exact line where its power stopped, just like I'd found in public records. But according to him, facts didn't stop Barbara. "She thinks she is the HOA," he said. "If your house touches the street, she thinks she owns your soul." And it wasn't just her. Jerry explained there was a tight-knit clique of older residents, self-appointed guardians of some imagined order. They never accepted the idea that outsiders, people not bound by their rules, could live peacefully among them. They didn't have legal power. But they behaved as if they did. Jerry had received the same kinds of letters I had. So had the guy 2 doors down. A single mom nearby had her trash can go missing 3 times. These weren't random incidents. They were calculated, persistent, and eerily familiar. Jerry put it best, "They count on us being quiet, being polite. But you shook the hornet's nest." And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I created a private Facebook group, Windmere Watchdogs, Non-HOA Homeowners United. I shared my story, posted videos, scans of complaint reports, property records, everything I had. Within 48 hours, 19 people had joined. And each had their own story. Barbara's tactics were laid bare. She'd submit false code violations, report phantom noise disturbances, and even flagged someone's dog as aggressive simply because it barked once while she walked by. The letters? Same font, same phrasing, same ominous sign-off, "You've been warned." This wasn't just nosy neighbor behavior, it was a harassment campaign. But now, we were organizing. Then came the next step, exposure. One of the members, Elena, was a paralegal. She offered to draft a cease and desist letter addressed directly to Barbara, representing our group. It was polished, airtight, and full of legal weight. But before we sent it, someone had a better idea. We decided to go public. We reserved the local library's multi-purpose room and posted flyers across both sides of the boundary, including inside Windmere Oaks itself. We kept the message simple: feeling harassed by the HOA? Even if you're not in it, come share your story. We expected maybe 10 people. Nearly 40 showed up. As the room filled, tension simmered just under the surface. People began sharing stories, one after another, like dominoes falling. Heads nodded. Gasps followed details. Barbara's name came up over and over again. Then, halfway through the meeting, she walked in. Clipboard. Visor. Lips pursed like she'd just swallowed vinegar. She stood in the back, arms crossed, scanning the room like she couldn't believe this many people had gathered, without her knowing. Someone mentioned her directly. She laughed. Laughed, and then said, "You people just don't understand what it takes to maintain neighborhood standards." That quote was all we needed. Elena was already recording. The clip went live that same evening. Within a day, local forums were buzzing. A journalist reached out, interested in doing a full feature on HOA abuse and boundary overreach. Barbara's name was suddenly in lights, and not the flattering kind. 2 days later, Barbara resigned from the HOA board. But we weren't finished. We filed an official harassment complaint with the county, delivered the cease and desist letter, and submitted requests for protective orders against repeated trespassing. Others followed suit. And then the final blow came from the HOA itself, a public statement confirming that their authority stopped at the original boundaries and that homes like mine, and Jerry's, were completely outside their jurisdiction. It took time. It took community. It took people getting uncomfortable, stepping forward, and standing up. But we got our peace back. I still live in the same house. Still have the same friends. The same satellite dish. And Barbara? She sold her home and moved out 3 months later.